Welcome to another episode of Municipal Focus. My name is Kevin Tachi, and I will be your host for this program. It's worth noting, before I give you insight into who our guest and what our topic is going to be today, is that I have been a part of WHCA for 20 years. This is my 20th year here in this organization, doing different shows like Municipal Focus and doing crosstalk. I'm kind of considered the OG of WHCA, as one of myself and Paul Watson being individuals who have been here as providing content. And over the years, I've been privileged to meet with different community leaders, stakeholders, volunteers, producers, and work with some great staff members. And during the journey, I've been able to cross paths with an individual like a Bob Hayes, who is my guest today, and be able to produce a show like Bring It On that he does. When there's, we have elections that take place, and we're able to either talk collectively about what's going on, or we're able to interview various guests. But we've noticed that throughout the years, things have changed, where you can be part of a political party and have differences and still be able to get the job done. We have come to a point in time, and I don't recall seeing it being so difficult, seeing so much discourse as we see these days, whether, it's on the federal level, whether we see things on the state level, to now it's leaking into some of our boards and committees. Bob and I are going to kind of talk a little bit about that today and share our thoughts on it. Bob.
Well, Kevin.
Welcome.
You talk about 20 years. It's probably been 15 years for me. So you and I probably have got to be the oldest pair that have done interviews.
OGs.
Yeah, the OGs.
The old guys.
Right.
Yeah.
Whether it's we've talked and interviewed each other, or we've had productions that we've both done, that we've both gone along with. And I couldn't agree with you more. The discord and the disconnect that's going on in this country. And it's been coming for 30 years. It isn't something that happened overnight. People like to point at one party or the other. They're all guilty. All the way along the line, they're all going to do something. But in the end, it leaks down into communities and it stops people from volunteering. And then enter in the midst of all of what our interviews that you and I have done, Facebook has become a giant place for people to talk and take shots. Like, they come forward and they take shots at select boards, or they take shots at school boards, but they don't get involved. They just take shots. Right back down to, and I know we're jumping right in, town boards, where town meeting is still the most formal part of democracy in these little towns, and we beg people to come to get a quorum. I think Whitman's got 8,000 or 9,000 registered voters, and they try to get 100 or 120. But yet the rest of the population complains about the outcome. If you don't participate, it's easy to say, my vote doesn't count. Every vote counts. Every single vote counts. And in the same way in Hanson. Hanson's got 5,000 or 6,000 or 7,000 voters, and we beg people to come. And then the next day, they're throwing rocks at everybody that was there. So you get what you get in some cases. Unfortunately, you get what you get.
I feel privileged that I've been able to be in front of these cameras, to be behind the cameras, and provide conversations. And a lot of times when we're talking about municipal meetings or municipalities, there's no D or an R or whatever party affiliation you may be a part of. But it seems as though it's getting tougher. I pride myself on being someone to be uber neutral. It doesn't matter to me whether you are a Democrat, a Republican, unenrolled. I'm unenrolled. I pride myself on that because I see what happens within the respective parties as they are starting to splinter, and you see there are individuals who want to be, further one direction than the other. They don't want to be center of whatever the party affiliation is. Why do you think that is?
Well, it's the finger pointing. I believe it's the internet. It's getting bashed. I think we need to what you're alluring to, in my opinion, is we need to come up with maybe a common sense party.
Ooh.
Because what's going on, whether it's just because Trump got elected or because Biden was there, people are taking sides and not even thinking about it. They're rock throwing against each other, and nothing gets done. If you look at, and this goes back probably to when I was a kid, and somebody said to me, "United we stand, divided we fall." And that's true in everything you do in life. If you don't have help, if you don't have a good life coach, if you don't have people helping you through life, people hire financial wizards, we'll say, to guide them along the path to success, we'll say. And they usually do better than the person who is looking on the internet for advice. You know what we all need a good mentor. We all need a good coach. And I know it all. It's because I got involved with some of the sporting things in my terms in Whitman-Hanson. We all need a good coach. We all need a good mentor. And it's somebody to talk it over with, so you see both sides of the coin before you make that big decision. Because a lot of those decisions are changing the way town politics, or the way everybody's complaining. And I don't blame them. Taxes are crazy. They have been crazy for years. But if people want services, they need to come forward and see how the services are provided, get better information before they just say, and I've seen it, Whitman or Hanson has the highest tax rate in Plymouth County. It's not true. All you got to do is look on the website. It's not true. But people make those statements, and when they make those statements, it becomes a problem.
What do you think it is? Do you think it's ideology? Do you think that it's personal ambition? Or do you think it's just it's a power struggle to be able to have one's way? What is the cause of the political chaos that we're seeing these days?
I think it's the parties that are going on. People are so afraid of stability or no stability, one way or the other there. Like, I see it in my personal business life in the last year or two, and just with when elections are coming up in general. I've been in my own business for many, many years. And when you come into an election that gets controversial, you sometimes get recession. People get, I'm holding on to the money, I'm scared to do anything. These things are going to end, but they do. They really do. Even the last election, the 1, 2, or 3 before that, people get very, very careful about how they spend. And when that happens, it creates chaos too. And I don't blame them. I'm not saying there's a magic wand. I'm just saying when you have instability in economies, it creates chaos.
You're somebody who, you're not just talking the talk. You're somebody who has been an elected official, somebody who served as the chair of the school committee for multiple years. What do you feel was like your secret to be able to get things done as the head of a committee and try to make sure that everybody is being heard and that the final vote or the final conversation is something that everybody feels that they collectively contributed to?
Well, that's a very difficult question to answer because I served for many, many years through different parts of what went on in economies.
Yep.
And economies make a large difference because, as you know, budgets are the biggest thing. And there's so many different angles that people come in with. Like, you'll have people, when you're talking about a school budget, you brought it up, so we'll get into that for a few seconds here. You have people that their children have been through school, so they don't think that they should have to pay anymore. And then you have people who are coming up with kindergarten kids who think everything should go to the school department, and it's a very difficult juggle. It's very difficult. I saw it for many years, and it's not just in school budgets, it's in town budgets. You have people that say, no, I don't want to buy a $150,000 plow truck. You don't need it. But they have no idea what goes on when it snows in the town.
Yeah.
They just want the roads plowed. They know that, but they don't want to pay that $150,000 for that truck. they think you can use one that's 50,000, and it just doesn't jive. They need to get better acquainted with the budgets, and then they'll see the need and the demand for certain things, or not the need. And I think part of it is it all starts federal government, state government, then it comes down to a municipality. But when you're in a small town, there's no room for both sides fighting with each other. We're trying to get through a budget. And budget cycles, you've been around a long time, Kevin. Budget cycles in both towns get difficult because people talk about being taxed out of the town, going to lose their home because they can't afford the taxes. And I understand that, and I feel bad for boards of selectmen because no matter what they do, they're getting rocks thrown at them from both sides of the coin. It happens.
Now you're no longer serving on the school committee, but you still watch, you still pay attention. Do you feel that the national discord that we're seeing, do you feel that it's still trickling into the local boards and committees and causing a dysfunction?
I think it's probably trickling in worse than it ever has because there's so much discord. There's so much, the disconnect, and everybody just at it. And everybody's voicing, because they're frustrated. I guess I'm not picking on voters. They get frustrated and they don't know the total story. They just get pieces. And a lot of that comes from internet keyboard warriors, as we might say.
Yeah.
They give half of the story, the half they want to see be heard.
Sure.
And just like in big-time federal news, you hear half of the story on the internet.
Yeah.
You don't ever hear the whole story. So people start forming their opinions based on what they heard. Doesn't make them bad people. They just don't have the whole story. It's hard, because I've seen it in all facets of local government. You can't have everything. You're not going to make everybody happy because there's going to be budgets that are going to cut something that somebody is very passionate about. It's difficult. I feel bad.
I find it interesting. There was prior to, and I don't want to sound like that individual, like, oh, I remember, walking to school, snow this high. I don't want to sound like that individual. But prior to social media, being able to put your opinion and close your laptop after and not deal with if you walked up to somebody and you said some of the harsh things that people say on social media, either a very robust argument would break out, or someone would get punched in the nose.
Yeah.
And people would walk away with hard feelings, but at least, that would be the end of it. There's no punch in the nose button on social media if someone happens to do that. What can be done to deal with people who want to stir up the masses with their own rhetoric?
I don't think there's anything that can be done, Kevin, because it's so easy to voice your opinion over the internet. And there are a tremendous amount of common sense people out there that a lot of them say, I don't even go on the internet because I know it's all that term we all hear, fake news. Fake news is but when somebody doesn't want to hear about it, they say it's fake news. Yeah. And nobody knows whether it's fake or it isn't fake. I mean, so that's a difficult, I don't think that's ever going to stop. I think that it has calmed down to the fact of a lot of people have seen so much of it that they just say, I don't listen to any of it. Because I'm one of those people that I try to stay away from all that controversial stuff because it's hoopla.
And I want to make sure folks know that I'm not advocating for violence or anything physical or anybody to have an argument. But I'm just saying is what can be done. I mean, should the Zuckerbergs and the different owners of platforms be the ones who somehow there's somebody moderating when a lot of this stuff is being posted, or are they doing it right by not being involved and not censoring what people are saying?
Well, that's another difficult question, and I'm not trying to dodge any of them. When you have a Zuckerberg, we'll say, who has a lot of influence, he's very, very successful in what he's done in career, people will follow it. People will take that person's, it's kind of like you see on the internet, somebody will say, if this goes on, I'm leaving the country. If that goes on, I'm leaving the country, but they never leave.
Sure.
So that's just false, empty threats. The part of that that's kind of crazy is, and you've seen this probably on the internet, actors, you know, people that have a different type of a job come up and try to influence the public, and not just in this current election. I'm talking, this has been going on for years. I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do that, or I'm with this party, or I'm with that party. I don't even understand what that means, but it sways people. You know, because it's a popularity contest. Sure. You know, you get some people that are very popular, and they say, I'm voting XYZ. People go, well, that person must be in the know. I'm going to do it too, so they follow. But if you really want to know what's going on, especially in local politics, you have to get involved, because it's multifaceted. It's not just, let's go to a board of selectmen. You have a board of selectmen that you can have Democrats and Republicans, and they'll say, we elected this person because we want all these budgets cut. But when that person happens to get in and says, wait a minute, you can't cut that or the streets won't get plowed, they get a better knowledge of it, then people say, well, I felt like I got cheated because I voted for that and they said that.
Yeah.
And it's not really that, it's the truth. Budgets are going to be what budgets are going to be. And you can't, like, if you look in every small town, and I travel around, I have the opportunity to travel around, all you got to do is look, DPWs have signs up, plow drivers wanted, plow drivers, nobody wants a job. It doesn't pay enough, and you have to have plow insurance, and you have to have all the stuff. And we've had no snow this year. So all these guys that have paid thousands of dollars for plow insurance, depending on how many accounts they have, because that's how you're charged, are losing money because there's no snowstorms. So they determined that I'm not doing this next year. So next year there's less people to plow. I mean, you see it every time. I'm one of those people that I want to hire somebody to plow my driveway. I don't want to shovel it. You can't find anybody, so you end up shoveling it or snow blowing it. It's just a fact of life. People are more, years ago, I think, people just did, we'll say plowing, and didn't realize whether they were making money or not. They get out there and just did it. Now people are more, numbers are on the computer. They're finding out more and more about, and they look into it and they go, hey, wait a minute, I took in $5,000 plowing last year and I paid out $4,400 in bills. This wasn't very profitable. I'm not doing it next year. So the town has nobody to plow. Ultimately, you have to up the rate. You have to dangle the carrot to make it so somebody wants to do the job and can see it as a profit, or you have no one. But then you have the people that don't want any tax increase, and I understand that because they're getting tax. It's a hard juggle to be on a board, a local board of selectmen. It's wicked hard.
So, and I want to throw this out there, and folks may or may not know this, but folks who serve here in local communities, I know in Brockton it's different because I believe that the city councils, they're paid a stipend. School committees paid a stipend. But in your local communities in the suburbs, nobody's paid. It's a volunteer-based thing. And you look where there are communities that struggle, that they have boards and committees that they cannot fill out the board because nobody wants to do it. And then you had alluded to earlier about town meeting and not being able to have enough for a quorum. Some communities, 100 voters, registered voters, 150. And it's even been said, hey, why don't we just lower it to 0? Because then you have a reverse effect where people are going, well, I'll be damned if the 50 people are going to decide what happens to my tax rate and what the budget's going to look like. So then you end up having a robust turnout at a town meeting because there are those communities that have lowered the quorum to 0. Give me your thoughts.
Well, you hit the nail right on the head with that, because a couple of the biggest town meetings in the town of Hanson I was at, and I got up and spoke at, because it had a school vote involved, it had something involved. In fact, I think one of them was during COVID. We were outside, and that was a big town meeting because it was outside and there was hundreds of people. Yeah, and it was great to see that many people interested. But I think a lot of people get caught up in the fact of, my vote, I'm only one vote. And the problem with that, it's kind of like saving money. People go, well, if I save $5 a day, what difference is that going to make? Well, there's 365 days in a year. If you saved $5 a day, do the math. And then if you took that money and paid it off your mortgage, do the math. It'd cut so many years off of a 30-year mortgage. But if you don't get started somewhere, you can never get finished. It's like the old adage of, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Because the job is so large, and especially in municipal governments, it's such a big undertaking that, and you just hit the nail on the head, none of these people are getting paid.
Right.
In small communities. I didn't know even that Brockton paid.
Yeah.
But I didn't know that. But in all of your small communities, there is not any community that I know of that pays a select board, a school board, an appeals board, a board of health. You know, the agent might be paid, but the members aren't. And then, if anything goes wrong, like you'll have a group, and we've all seen it, they're going to build 4 or 5 or 6 or 8 houses in a development, and all the neighbors come out in force. And all 20 of them will say, show up at a meeting, and it gets hostile. They think, well, why doesn't the Board of Selectmen stop this? Because the Board of Selectmen can't. They have no they have no power to stop it. You can't stop building in a small town. What about the people who own the lots for years and years and years, and they own them in their house lots? They're just going to throw them away because 20 neighbors don't want it built? And I feel for both sides.
Sure.
I'm not taking a stance on this. I'm just saying that you have to know all of what's going on to be able to make a judgment, and people, as we know, rush to judgment on lots of things.
Sure.
And it creates hostility in small towns. And it's hard. I'm not defending either side. It's very difficult.
But how do we as a society, how do we here like locally find a way to gain a common ground to be able to get things done? Whether you're somebody who is for the MBTA Communities Act, and not many people are.
No.
But then also realize that, you know, to find somewhere to rent or to lease keeps climbing, so it's getting more and more expensive because there's the housing stock and the stock when it comes to apartments and being able to lease is diminishing. So again, it's supply and demand, and if there's a limited supply, well, then the demand for the amount is going to go up and it'll increase.
Kevin, if I could answer that question,
Yep.
I'd be a multimillionaire, and you and I wouldn't be sitting here having this discussion. Part of the problem is Whitman and Hanson. I've lived here all my life, and we never, ever considered Whitman or Hanson to be a suburb of Boston. Like, the North Shore was always sort of considered a suburb of Boston. And their housing rate was way in trouble many, many years ago in the North Shore communities. It's filtered to the South Shore because people went and looked on the North Shore and they said, wait a minute, a house is $750,000. I can move to the South Shore and it's $300,000 or $400,000. But eventually, as you get built out, as you build communities out, the land gets worth more because we're not inventing any new land. We're not just pulling it out of the sky. There's only so many places are going to be built, and the population is on the rise, so it's what pushes the rates up. It's what pushes a house, like house lots in Hanson. My first house on Gorwin Drive I paid $45,000 for. That house today is $6.5.
Well,
I remember people saying, right here in Whitman, Homeland Drive, Homeland Park, you know, beautiful, nice area. Those houses were very, very reasonable. But like everything is supply and demand is what creates price.
Right.
Just look at the automobile industry during COVID. They couldn't make any cars. Cars were doing $10,000 over list price.
It's incredible.
And dealers were getting it because there was no supply.
Yep.
As soon as the supply came, like right today, they're discounting trucks. A friend of mine just bought a truck. He walked in. They took $15,000 off the sticker price because it was a 24 and there's tons of leftovers. So supply and demand is what makes the price. I know I wouldn't want to be a landlord, but I have some friends that are landlords, and they get bashed on the internet. You're a crook because you're renting a one-bedroom apartment for $1,900 a month.
Right.
But that's what they bring.
Right.
So it's difficult. Every single facet, every single problem you and I are discussing right now, I don't know the answer. And if I did, like I said, I'd be a multimillionaire. You and I wouldn't be sitting here. We'd be somewhere else enjoying it. It's a very difficult thing because we have young people, middle-aged people, older people, elderly people, and they're all buying the same eggs. They're talking about eggs being, the eggs used to be 99 cents not that long ago. You know, I'm not saying like when Henry's hamburgers were a quarter. You know, that's way long ago. I'm saying it wasn't that long ago that eggs were 99 cents. And now they're talking eggs could go to $10 for a dozen eggs.
We got just a few minutes left here, but great conversation. What can, we look at political leadership in the respective parties. Is there anything that they can do to kind of tone down the rhetoric? Or what about community leaders, educators, even the media? Can anything be done to kind of tone down the rhetoric, where it's more of a conversation than it being adversarial when it comes to getting things done politically?
I don't think there's anything that can physically be done. I think time helps a lot of that. It settles it down. God knows, just use the last election. People were sick of hearing about it on the news. It didn't matter which side you were voting on. You turned on the TV, every station talked about it. And between the 5 o'clock news and the 11 o'clock news, it escalated. Yeah. And wait a minute, these people aren't even around. How did it escalate? Because people escalate it. You know, it's just a difficult place to be in. I don't know how leaders, like I said, if we could figure it out, Kev, it would be geniuses. It's a difficult platform to work on because of people are frustrated. Yeah. And this frustration just didn't spawn last week. This has been going on for 30 years, getting worse. You can see every election, whether it was the D or the R elected, it got more and more confrontational as it went on. And then as it settles, people kind of settle down, and then all of a sudden the next election comes up and it comes back.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens. I definitely want to thank you for joining me to have this conversation. If anything, you were kind of the one, you and I, when we talk every now and then, you're like, maybe we should have a conversation. And I think the last time we talked a week or two ago, you had mentioned it, and I said, that would be a great topic for you and I. Two guys who are kind of neutral.
Yeah.
Like doing this, like informing the people who tune into a show like this, whether it's Municipal Focus, Crosstalk, Bring It On, or any of the other great shows that we have here on WHCA. Last question I'll ask you. Being somebody who, again, an elected leader, but also a consummate volunteer, why have you done it all these years? Why do you love what you do? Why do you love these communities and give so much?
Well, I don't think, Kevin, you could live in a better community than Whitman and Hanson. I overlook, we'll say, certain things because you have to.
Yeah.
I think good communities are made up with good volunteers, and it's getting more and more difficult to get volunteers because as soon as the show is, there's going to be somebody that comes after me because they didn't like one of my answers, or comes after you because they didn't like one of your answers. And a lot of people don't want to be on that seat. Yeah. They just want to come in, watch their child play a game, walk out the door, and kind of not be noticed. There's nothing wrong with that. But somebody has to be the volunteer to do the work in small communities. And we're very, I think we're in a good position. We've got shortage of volunteers in both communities, but we have good communities where people do step up, and it makes a difference. So if you want to volunteer for anything in one of these towns, there's so many avenues, ladies and gentlemen, you can get to do it. Just all you've got to do is get your search engine going and type in anything, and you'll see they're looking for volunteers. I mean, the Board of Selectmen every week says, we have all these positions that nobody runs for. And that's a topic for another
Indeed.
show. They need to maybe think about slowing down the difficulty of how they put people on committees, because a lot of people don't want to go through the ringer. A conversation for another day.
Excellent. I want to thank you for being my guest and having a great conversation.
Thank you for having me.
I want to take a moment to thank the executive producers of this show, late Steve Roy and Eric Dresser, for allowing conversations like these to take place, whether I'm in front of the camera, Bob, or anybody else. If you are interested in sharing your thoughts and your viewpoints, whether it's on this show or if you want to create your own show, you can always go to the website to find out more information, whca.tv. Until our next conversation, you've been tuned into Municipal Focus. Have a good day.